Poppy Winanti, da Indonésia. Como todos sabemos, a Indonésia é o mais novo membro pleno dos BRICS. Talvez esse tem sido o fato mais importante nesta presidência brasileira em 2025. Foi esse anúncio que foi feito mais ou menos um mês. É importante, talvez, pensar que a Indonésia ele começou todo o processo de ingresso e de pedido de inclusão nos BRICS desde 2023, mas esse processo fica um pouco em suspenso devido à mudança planejada que tinha da presidência. E logo, começo deste ano, a Indonésia decidiu um pedido específico sobre o ingresso pleno. A adesão da Indonésia é muito importante para os BRICS, sobretudo pelo perfil internacional da Indonésia, pelo papel como um dos principais estados do sul global, pelo papel histórico que a Indonésia tem. Todos nos lembramos da Conferência de Bandung, do papel tão importante do presidente Sukarno, mas também porque é o ingresso do mundo islâmico também, de uma maneira muito forte, nos BRICS, e também de uma liderança desse sudeste asiático e, sobretudo, do papel tão importante que ele tem na ASEAN. Então, acho que a Indonésia ele traz um plus nesta discussão e no grupo dos BRICS, nesta família BRICS, se a gente pode pensar assim, dessa maneira. Além de que é um dos países mais populosos, com certeza ele vai trazer muitas novidades nesta discussão. A Indonésia, penso que muito parecido com o Brasil, tenta manter uma posição entre esse mundo ocidental e o mundo do sul global. Mas para conversar isso e seguramente outros detalhes das implicações sobre esse ingresso da Indonésia no BRICS Plus, quais são as implicações, quais são as discussões políticas internas, qual é o papel que a Indonésia está pensando ter dentro dos BRICS, qual é a agenda, um pouco, e essa discussão. Nós convidamos hoje a professora Poppy Winanti, que ela é professora de Relações Internacionais na Universidade de Gadjah Mada. Me desculpa, Poppy, se estou pronunciando errado, mas ela tem escrito bastante sobre essa discussão sobre política externa da Indonésia, sobretudo a diplomacia da Indonésia e da cooperação sul-sul. Ela trabalha bastante sobre economia política, conflitos, economia dos recursos naturais, indústrias extrativas, e nisso temos muita coincidência com a Indonésia. É um país rico em recursos naturais, que nos faz muito próximo, digamos, em nossas questões também, como o Brasil. A professora tem um doutorado em política pela Universidade de Glasgow e tem um mestrado pelo LSE e também pela School of Public Policy. Estamos muito felizes que a professora Poppy aceitou nosso convite. Com certeza, este vai ser o primeiro de muitos diálogos, sobretudo este ano, que teremos no Brasil, em julho, a cúpula dos BRICS, e esperamos que seja uma cúpula, obviamente, das autoridades, mas que também seja a oportunidade do encontro do mundo acadêmico e do mundo da sociedade civil. Então, muito obrigada de novo e muito bem-vinda. Nós pensamos uma dinâmica mais ou menos assim. A professora Poppy, ela vai fazer uma apresentação inicial entre 30 e 40 minutos sobre essas expectativas e qual é a política e as aspirações da Indonésia em fazer parte do agrupamento do BRICS. E depois vamos abrir para comentários, perguntas, etc. Como sempre, todos os comentários e todas as perguntas através de nosso Q&A para vocês estar mais tranquilos e ficar e facilitar aqui nossa participação.
Thank
Posso
you,
have the
Professor
floor.
Rodriguez, for a very warm welcome. And it's really an honor for me to be here. I'm really happy to be invited for this kind of dialogue. This is, to be honest, this is the first time for me to speak with the Brazilian counterpart, and I'm very, very happy when I got the email from you. So I'd like to share my thought regarding recent kind of development, Indonesia's membership in BRICS. I think this is also one of the hot topics that we've been discussing also domestically in Indonesia as well. As you know that as you also from your welcome remark, you mentioned that the initiation Indonesia's membership was already started since like 2023. However, at that time, the previous administration seemed like kind of hesitant to be part of the BRICS, as the previous government, in my opinion, was kind of looking at it from different kind of perspective, a little bit kind of worried regarding Indonesia's positions for the non-alignment kind of movement as part of the Indonesia's foreign policies kind of foundation. So that's why we can see the hesitant from the previous administration. However, when we got the new president, you see that there has been a very significant change in Indonesia's orientation regarding its membership towards BRICS. So previously, if we can see also the previous administration was preparing Indonesia to be part of the accession towards the OECD. So there was also a debate within Indonesian scholars whether we're going to access to the OECD or we're going to go for BRICS. That was also the discussion for the last couple years. So that's why when finally the new government accepted the invitation that Indonesia is becoming the members of the BRICS, that also changed the discussion domestically. So what I'm trying to say for today's discussion is the reasons why then the Indonesian government is now becoming the member of the BRICS is mostly motivated by the political kind of motivation, mostly, in my opinion. Of course, there are some other kind of considerations, including the economic kind of gain. However, again, I think the biggest motivation for the Indonesian government to be part of the BRICS obviously is driven by the political motivation. So I'm going to discuss that from the Indonesian perspective, why then it is driven mostly by the political kind of consideration, even though obviously there are some other aspects regarding the economic gain that Indonesia would probably also can achieve from this kind of engagement with BRICS. That will be the first part of my discussion, and later on I'll also discuss the challenges that the Indonesian government will face regarding the newest kind of development regarding its membership. I don't think I'll spend like 30 or 40 minutes. I hope that I will have a very short or brief presentation and then talk, and then I'd like to hear more, and then we can discuss that. The first thing, as I mentioned to you earlier, that Indonesia's membership in BRICS obviously cannot be separated from domestic political change and also the global context. Domestic political change, I mentioned to you earlier that there has been change in the Indonesian leadership that also giving Indonesia's different kind of orientation for its foreign policy. However, at the global context, we cannot also overlook that there has been the election of the second term of President Trump. So that was also one of the reasons why then the Indonesian government was trying to navigate with the election of the US presidency. So those are the contexts why then in my opinion, mostly motivated by the political kind of reasons. Another aspect why then, even though probably BRICS can also provide Indonesia with the platform for the economic gain. However, we have to admit that most of the members in BRICS, mostly we can see that the membership in BRICS, the members of the BRICS are usually known for their strategic protectionist kind of policy in terms of their economic, because they're trying to really enhance the national sovereignty. So that's why in terms of the economic, probably it is not sort of like most driver for the Indonesian to be part of the BRICS. Another aspect is because even like before becoming the members of the BRICS, Indonesia has already having very strong economic relations with some of the BRICS members. For example, with China. Indonesia and China are very strong trade partners. China even one of the biggest or the most important trading partners, not only in terms of the export destination, but also imports of the origins for Indonesian products. So that's why I think in terms of the economic relations, especially when we're talking about the Indonesia and China, China is already the biggest trading partners for Indonesia. And then India. India is also has been already Indonesian important trading partners as well. So in that sense, in terms of the economic gain, I think for Indonesia, it is only like additional kind of the economic gain that Indonesia can achieve. More or less, Indonesia has also been part of the free trade agreement with China. We are part of the RCEP. We are part of the ASEAN and China free trade agreement. And then for other countries as part of the BRICS members, there are also some limitation when we're talking about the economic gain. It's because of the distance, it's because of the economic compatibility is also considered low, because Indonesia is now trying to enhance the ASEAN economic community as well. However, that doesn't mean that Indonesia will not gain in terms of the economic. There are obviously, in my opinion, also some other economic cooperation that Indonesia can establish with BRICS members. One of the aspect is the Indonesia probably also will get the access to alternative, what we call as the financial support for the Indonesian development. We know that BRICS has the new development bank. So the existence of the new development bank can also be part of the Indonesia's kind of source of alternative development financing as to the existing kind of mainstream source for Indonesian development support. So that's why accessing to alternative international financial support can also be part of the considerations. In addition to that, I think there are also other economic area that Indonesia can also enhance with its membership with BRICS. Indonesia can learn from Brazil, for example, in regard to the energy transitions, how then Brazilian government is quite successful in terms of the promoting the biofuel. So there are some other areas that Indonesia can also develop. In addition to that, I think why then in the political kind of motivation is much more important is because the existence of BRICS can also provide Indonesia with the global kind of kind of the well-known in the global arena. As you mentioned in your welcome remark earlier, Indonesia and some of the global South countries were promoting the Bandung spirit. So being part of the BRICS politically will be given Indonesia also a chance to show that Indonesia is still, have a chance to be part of the global South kind of cooperation. So in that regard, I think the spirit of the BRICS as the alternative to the mainstream kind of the existing Western kind of led organization And then Indonesia is being part of the BRICS can also give the Indonesia opportunity to be part of the Global South kind of movement. So that's why comparing the economic and also political motivations, I think it's very important that the Indonesian government is following the ambition to be part of the BRICS because of the political kind of stance. The political motivation is also because the Indonesian government sees the BRICS as strategic alliance. So as part of the members of the BRICS, Indonesia can also gain strategic influence, positioning itself as the part of the Global South, but also bridging for the developed and developing countries. Indonesia is part of the G20 club, so that's why being part of the BRICS can also influence or enhance Indonesia's kind of leverage in terms of the global political arena. So that's why in that area, I think it's very important to see, because especially some of the scholars in Indonesia see that the Indonesian membership in BRICS can also gain economic kind of gain for Indonesia. But then when we see more thoroughly, there is probably much more driven by the political motivations in terms of the global governance, in terms of the Indonesia's kind of ambition to be part of the Global South perspective in regard to giving the alternative to the existing mainstream kind of the Western dominated global governance. So in that regard, I think it's very important to see how then this kind of ambition from Indonesia, aspire from Indonesia, is being sort of like served under the membership in BRICS. However, we can also see the challenges, as you mentioned earlier as well, that currently we see a very different kind of global political situations. We see how then the global political arena has been has been kind of seen as the full of uncertainties. We see that several kind of countries are being more protectionist, several countries are being inward looking to some extent, especially also again the change in the political situation in the US has put this kind of situation even more challenging for a country like Indonesia. So that's why the being part of the BRICS also put Indonesia kind of quote unquote risk, because Indonesia has to make it clear and Indonesia has to navigate the relations between the Western powers, the relations with the superpowers, the other superpowers, the Western domination countries, and so on and so forth. So that's why navigating between Indonesia's interests as part of the Global South and also as part of the bridging between developed countries and developing countries cannot be overlooked as well. So that is one of the things that Indonesia has to be able to navigate, how then the relations with the US, the relations with the Western powers are not really sort of like, being challenged by the fact that Indonesia is being part of the BRICS members. Another challenge that Indonesia is also important to navigate is regarding some of the BRICS members are being part of or still receiving the international sanction, as we know. So that's why in that sense, the Indonesian government is also, it's very important for the Indonesian government to be really, really kind of delicate in building the relations with some of the members within the BRICS that are still under the sanction in international forum or international arena. So we know that Russia, Iran, they are still under the international sanctions. So that's why it is very important, again, because Indonesian foreign policy was really having the spirit of non-alignment movement. So that's why being part of the BRICS may also put risk in that sense. Another aspect that we can also elaborate further regarding the Indonesia's membership in BRICS is also, this is also probably not really related to whether Indonesia is becoming the BRICS members or not, but the reliance too much on China, for example, has been the concern from the Indonesian perspective as well. Being part of the BRICS may also put Indonesia even relying more to China as compared to before. Again, there are some institutions within the BRICS, probably from the Indonesian perspective, is also dominated by China, for example. So that's why dependence on China is also another aspect or another element that the Indonesian government should also need to be considered as well as part of this. So posing this kind of risk for the Indonesia is again another aspect that should be considered by the Indonesian government. So another aspect that also I think is also important to discuss further is rivalry within the BRICS itself. As we know that, for example, India and China, they still have some issues regarding the borders. There are some rivalry within the BRICS regarding certain issues, international issues, how, for example, dealing with the conflict in Gaza, how then dealing with the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. So those kind of issues cannot be overlooked because usually, and before Indonesia becoming the members of the BRICS, usually Indonesia has a very clear position regarding, for example, Gaza. Now we have a very different kind of situation being part of the BRICS, for example. So those are the aspects that we see from the Indonesian perspective. Obviously, being part of the BRICS provides Indonesia with a very strong platform as part of the Global South. Being part of the BRICS has already provided Indonesia with the leverage when Indonesia would like to extend and would like to increase the bargaining position, especially when dealing with the Western powers, for example. However, at the same time, being part of the BRICS is also posing Indonesia with several kind of risk challenge that should be able to be mitigated by the Indonesian government. So last but not least, I think in terms of the domestic aspect in Indonesian context, Indonesia just has a new president. We have a domestic kind of reform. And then being part of the BRICS will also give Indonesian kind of additional burden. We understand that being part of the international kind of entities also requires certain kind of responsibilities. So that's why this is probably another aspect that how then Indonesia within the context of its domestic reform is able to also showing the responsibility, being active part of the BRICS that can also be challenging for the Indonesian context. Well, I guess that's the overview from my perspective, but I'm very happy to listen and to also open to any discussion regarding why and how and then what it will be the future of the Indonesian membership within the BRICS. Thank you, Professor Rodriguez.
Muito obrigada, professora Poppy. Acho que muito ilustrativo e nos traz uma discussão, talvez em alguns aspectos, muito parecida à discussão que temos internamente aqui no Brasil, sobretudo frente ao BRICS, e talvez nos últimos anos, sendo o Brasil um dos países fundadores e um país que leva já mais de quase 15 anos dentro dos BRICS. Mas essa discussão geopolítica e política sempre está presente, muito mais nos últimos tempos, e sobretudo, como você colocou, nesse contexto internacional de hoje. Muitas discussões internas, quase somos anti-ocidentais ou contra o Ocidente, e etc., etc., e qual é o posicionamento do Brasil, e o Brasil tem, historicamente, tido uma política externa bastante equilibrada, de balanço entre todas, digamos que todas as tendências políticas e todos os arranjamentos políticos. Mas às vezes fica um pouco difícil, porque os BRICS, não sei se isso acontece também na Indonésia, eles começaram a ser muito demonizados internamente aqui no Brasil, colocando que nossa participação nos BRICS nos coloca em um bloco muito específico contra, obviamente, contra o Ocidente, mas especialmente contra os Estados Unidos e, sobretudo, com as últimas manifestações do presidente Trump em questão de tarifas, em questão de as ameaças contra alguma política de desdolarização e etc. Então, sempre um desafio também para nós, como nos manter nesse processo um pouco, se a gente pode falar, um pouco de neutralidade nessa discussão. Acho bem interessante porque mesmo que o Brasil, a China também tem um papel muito importante no Brasil, nosso primeiro parceiro comercial, e aí, obviamente, que nossa relação com a China ela é muito forte, temos mais de 50 anos de relação, e ela é muito estreita e ela é muito potente. Então, esse também é um elemento bastante importante nessa discussão. E eu queria trazer algumas questões e já abrindo aqui os comentários e as questões aqui para todo mundo, como essa discussão, uma discussão governamental. E você estava trazendo muito claramente que talvez o presidente anterior ele tinha uma certa cautela da entrada dos BRICS, etc. E esse novo presidente ele decidiu que era importante essa inclusão como membro pleno dentro dos BRICS, esse pedido de inclusão, e sobretudo em uma ideia desse fortalecimento desse sul global, que talvez seja um dos elementos mais importantes da discussão desse papel do BRICS, esse fortalecimento da cooperação do sul global, além de toda a discussão de uma demanda por uma mudança da arquitetura financeira internacional, etc. Mas como internamente a sociedade ele está, não sei, está entendendo essa entrada nos BRICS e como ela se posiciona de alguma maneira. E pergunto isso porque uma às vezes é atuação governamental, institucional, e umas vezes é a sociedade, como ela se manifesta. E eu queria saber um pouco como isso tem sido, ou como está sendo lido, digamos, pela sociedade, que acho que isso é importante. E outro ponto que talvez eu queria trazer aí é como vocês estão se situando frente a essas, digamos, ameaças do presidente Trump. Vocês têm uma relação também, vocês são parte do G20, isso é bem importante. Como vocês se veem nesse emaranhado político internacional, e nesse equilíbrio que os países têm que fazer, não é? Obrigatoriamente e, bom, necessariamente nesse contexto.
Thank you, Professor Rodriguez, for the question. I think it's a very important question. And I'm happy to hear that what I said earlier was actually also similar to what happened in Brazil, right? Whether the Brazilian government should respond to the geopolitical tension, how they're coping with that kind of situation is similar to the debate within Indonesian context. Regarding Indonesia's membership in BRICS, that also creates a debate within internally. Initially, people also, at least in terms of the academics kind of discussion, initially people started to think that Indonesia's accession to the OECD would provide the Indonesian government opportunity to do the domestic reform. So that's why people eager to see how then the process for the accession process within the OECD would provide Indonesia kind of chance to also doing the regulatory reform, domestic reform, things like that. And then suddenly when the new government started to say, oh, okay, we should join these BRICS instead of, but then I think the government is still processing the accession to OECD as well. So now the discussion within the internal, at least at the academic kind of forum, we understand that these two aspects, at least some of them, and including me, I don't see that as either or kind of situation. We can do both as part of the Indonesian kind of Indonesian endeavor to also serving the Indonesia's kind of interest. So accession to the OECD, it can be seen or can be perceived as the opportunity to do the domestic reform and also to balance the relations with the Western powers. So that's why Indonesia still has to, it is important for the Indonesian government to take it seriously for the OECD accession for that reason. So not for the balancing with the Western powers and also for the domestic reform. However, the membership with BRICS, I also personally support that, and as many other the academics in Indonesia also support the BRICS for many reasons, as I explained earlier. So as you said that there has been some sort of like internal kind of discussion, and then so many kind of academic forum, discussing what should Indonesian government do with this kind of situation, OECD versus BRICS, BRICS versus OECD, things like that. And then for other reasons, I think one of the aspects then we can also consider regarding Indonesian membership with BRICS is regarding Indonesia's kind of long-term goals in terms of the green transition, in terms of the food security, in terms of the Indonesians' kind of effort to also fulfilling its international commitment or global commitment regarding the achieving net zero emissions. And then membership in BRICS can also provide Indonesia's opportunity to achieve all those goals. Collaborations with all the BRICS members are, in my opinion, will also give Indonesian a chance to also greater chance to also to achieve all those the long-term kind of goals for the Indonesian interest. So domestically, it's still a debate. Domestically, but then the tendency, I can see that the tendency is being positive, for both accession to the OECD for that reasons, especially for pushing and enforcing domestic reform. And then for the BRICS, there is also an opportunity for Indonesian government to also achieve the national long-term goals being part of the membership with BRICS. So that's why I think internally, I think I can see from several kind of fora in Indonesia, the academics, NGOs, think tanks, they are very excited to see how then the Indonesian government can navigate. Now I think some of the prominent think tanks in Indonesia are also discussing how then actually we can also give the government kind of policy recommendations, how to navigate between this kind of instruments via accession to the OECD and how to achieve Indonesian national goals via its BRICS membership. And regarding to your second questions for the current situation with the election of the new president in the US with Donald Trump, for me, as we can see, even though we are quite surprised, obviously, I can see that some people are still surprised with the election of Donald Trump. However, now we can see from his previous kind of administration, right? We know what sort of like policies that he's going to implement in the US. So compared to the first period of his term, I think the second period, many countries, including Indonesia, to some extent are much more quote unquote kind of ready and can be predicted what sort of like policies that he's going to implement. So that's why now we know what sort of like policy. So that's why we can be prepared. And as we can also learn from his previous administration within the US, we can also collaborate with the business communities in the US that probably will also be heavily affected by protectionist policies done by the Donald Trump. In his previous administration, it was done, and based on the Indonesian experience, that the Indonesian government is reaching out to the business community in the US that are heavily affected by the Donald Trump's protectionist policies, because of that kind of protectionist policies, their access to the Indonesian supplies, especially for raw materials, are also limited. They were also hurting the business in the US. So that's why I think navigating the situations with Donald Trump in the second administration, we have already more or less, it wasn't as probably shocking the first one, even though still shocking for me, but still we have this kind of, experience how to deal with the previous kind of administration as well. So that's why collaborating and then reaching out, especially all the business community that also heavily impacted by this kind of protectionist policy, was one of the ways how to how to tackle with this. And another aspect, again, as I mentioned in my previous comment, being part of the BRICS is also increasing Indonesia's leverage. Indonesia is part of the G20, Indonesia is part of some of the free trade agreements, but then being part of the BRICS is also increasing the leverage of Indonesia. And I think this is also one of the aspects that we as the scholars from the BRICS can also pursue our government, that we can use this BRICS as part of the coalition whenever we want to voice our interest from developing countries at international kind of forums such as the WTO, for example. This is also another important kind of platform for Indonesia and other BRICS countries. Now we know that the WTO is in the kind of limbo situations. The WTO is in this kind of crisis. So that's why reforming the WTO from the BRICS perspective, as long as we can have one voice regarding that. So that will be giving us more chance to have the reformed WTO as we perceive as part of the, delivering and serving the interests of the global South perspectives. However, it is also challenging because, again, not in every issue all the BRICS members have one voice regarding all the things that we negotiate under the WTO, for example. Yes, thank you, Professor Rodriguez.
Obrigada, professora. Tem duas perguntas aqui, eu vou terminar aqui com uma e vou para aquelas lá um pouco para a gente ter um pouco mais da Indonésia. Você viu que a gente conhece pouco, não é? Que nossa relação com a Indonésia é pequena, mesmo que a gente tenha um certo comércio com a Indonésia, mas nossos países estão muito longe, digamos, para ter um processo de conhecimento maior, mas eu acho que essa possibilidade dos BRICS nos vai juntar seguramente muito mais. Tem outros países também da região, como Malásia, Vietnã, Tailândia, que são parceiros observadores dos BRICS, né, que também estão dentro desse agrupamento BRICS, mas em outra condição. Só a Indonésia ela foi aceita como parceiro pleno, digamos. Então, são 4 países do Sudeste Asiático que estão, o que dá um peso bastante importante para a região dentro dos BRICS. Se nós pensamos, por exemplo, América Latina, o único país é Brasil, que é parte dos BRICS pleno. Temos 2 países que são observadores, que Cuba e Bolívia, mas essa potencialidade do Sudeste Asiático, ele se mostra como uma região bastante importante, não é? Nessa discussão dessa ideia de um sul global muito mais fortalecido, de um processo coletivo de cooperação, de uma agenda coletiva que eu acho que é importante. Eu queria um pouco ver qual é o seu posicionamento frente a isso, sobre esse papel do Sudeste Asiático. Obviamente, economias emergentes, economias bastante potentes, e que isso seguramente vai trazer, mesmo em termos econômicos ou comerciais, etc., vai trazer uma potencialidade maior também dentro dos BRICS, mesmo que esse não seja o objetivo fundamental, mas isso é importante. Então, eu queria ver um pouco isso. Bom, e se a gente junta com a Índia, a gente vai vendo uma potência da Ásia, sim, claro, da China, mas da Ásia nesse processo. Eu queria esse como primeiro. E segundo, eu queria só saber que além dessas discussões mais públicas, digamos, com esse novo governo Trump, se tem algum elemento específico frente à entrada da Indonésia dos BRICS, muito mais específico, ou seja, alguma condicionalidade, algum processo, alguma, não sei, alguma chamada de atenção, porque a Indonésia entra nos BRICS, ou um pouco se isso trouxe alguma contorno diplomático específico, ou mesmo com os Estados Unidos ou com qualquer outra potência ocidental, mesmo com a Austrália, ou mesmo com qualquer país europeu, mas se teve alguma, digamos, algum questionamento do porquê a Indonésia decidiu pedir a inclusão dentro dos BRICS. Isso, e depois eu queria entrar com outras perguntas aqui, que são um pouco mais específicas. Obrigada.
Okay, thank you, Professor Rodriguez. Regarding, yes, you are right. Indonesia is the first kind of Southeast Asian countries that formally became the BRICS member. And we do hope that this kind of movement can also, inspired others to be fully, formally becoming also the members of the BRICS. However, before it can be achieved, then what I'm actually thinking regarding this kind of situation, at least Indonesia can also be a bridge for the ASEAN sort of like, positions and the BRICS kind of, practices. So as part of the ASEAN members, before other ASEAN members are joining the BRICS, as you mentioned, like Malaysia is already, becoming the observer countries. So that kind of that kind of initiative is also important, that Indonesia can be a bridge in, say, for example, some of the principles under the ASEAN can also be known by the BRICS members, and then I think we shared mostly some of the norms, some of the principles within ASEAN and also the BRICS that can also be, transferred or being learned from each other. So as part of the ASEAN, at this moment at least, as the only ASEAN members that are now being also the BRICS members, so Indonesia can play Indonesia can play that kind of role, bridging and then harmonizing or probably synchronizing some of the practices under the ASEAN and also the practices under the BRICS. The most important aspect is also because ASEAN is still in the process of becoming like, community, it's still in the process. So that's why I think ASEAN is also important for ASEAN to learn from the members of the BRICS experience in developing the unity within the BRICS, for example. So bridging this kind of situations or bridging this kind of practices, principles are very, very important. And the second aspect that your question, as far as I know, I don't think there is a very strong kind of reaction from our Western kind of, allies or colleagues or counterparts so far. I think they are still wait and see kind of situation as well, because it's just very new. And then we also need probably after, several months, we can see how actually they should react. Even though, again, particular to the Donald Trump kind of administration has already kind of stated that they're going to be harsh, put some sort of like kind of hard sort of like policy towards countries that are having, surplus, and most of them with the BRICS members, things like that. So I think we are still in the process of, wait their reaction. But so far, I don't think that there is a strong reaction regarding Indonesia's membership to the BRICS. And considering that I think other countries are still also waiting what next regarding the Trump administration. So that's why we are in that kind of situation, in my opinion. So far, at least there is no if then we expect something, a very strong reaction. I don't think we have seen that so far. But then we need to wait until several kind of moment after this, and then especially when people started to realize that they need to do something about the protectionist policies done by the US government, for example.
Estamos todos nesse compasso de espera. Penso que esse é um momento bastante importante. Eu queria aqui trazer uma pergunta de Cândido, das pessoas, dos nossos estudantes que estão aqui conosco. Ele traz uma discussão que você comentou e que acho que para o Brasil também é muito importante, porque nós dois países temos reservas de minério bastante importantes, não é? E uma das nossas discussões mais importantes, talvez no Brasil, é que nós somos exportadores de matéria-prima, somos basicamente, mas nós não participamos realmente no processo muito mais tecnológico de transformação desse minério. Coisa que é bastante importante porque se nos coloca num papel muito claro nessa cadeia global, não é? Na cadeia global. Então, talvez uma discussão é pensar, talvez pela experiência de vocês, pela experiência nossa, talvez como pensar de que talvez se nos BRICS, talvez é possível pensar uma possibilidade de países como os nossos ter um melhor papel nessa cadeia global e, sobretudo, ter melhor participação, talvez, nesses processos de manufatura e de tecnologia, carro elétrico e etc., já que nós temos umas reservas muito importantes desses minérios e desses minérios críticos. Então, essa é uma pergunta, sobretudo, nessa discussão. E eu queria trazer outra pergunta, que também está aqui, que um pouco você mencionou também na sua participação sobre transição energética. E acho que essa é uma discussão importantíssima para o mundo inteiro. Esse vai ser um dos pontos da agenda também na cúpula dos BRICS, desses 5 pontos que o Brasil traz como pontos importantes para discutir na cúpula em julho, que vai ser tudo de mudanças climáticas, transição energética, etc., etc., e queria saber um pouco como a Indonésia está se colocando nessa discussão. Um pouco para ir pensando quais são os desafios também, quais são as possibilidades, quanto isso pode ser verdadeiramente uma agenda coletiva do BRICS.
Yes, thank you, Professor Rodriguez, and also the question, I think, from the audience, regarding the critical minerals. I agree with you that I think Brazil, Indonesia, and some developing countries are actually the one who actually have the critical minerals, but our position in the global value chain is very, very low. And we are usually only like exporting the raw materials, while then the added value kind of process is happening somewhere else. So that's why we rarely gaining from that kind of process. So in regard to that kind of situation, the previous administration in Indonesia has started to have what we call as the downstreaming policy. I think it was started a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago. And then one of the policies is banning, strictly prohibited for Indonesian entities to export the raw materials. And as you can see, that policy was intended to bring our position in the global value chains, not only for exporting the raw materials, but also domestic processing is enhanced in within domestic market. Obviously, I think personally, I support that idea. Again, I think it was a little, well, not little, it was quite late for a country like Indonesia. It should have been done, years ago, but for many reasons, it wasn't done. So that's why when the government was started to introduce this kind of policy, it was not easy. Domestically, there was also resistance because the government was, well, the idea is really kind of noble. The idea is really good. However, sometimes when we're dealing with the implementation, there are some issues regarding the implementations. That is one thing. But globally, we also receive some challenges, especially from the countries that need Indonesian raw materials. As you can see as well, a couple of years ago, Indonesian government was challenged by the EU at the WTO dispute settlement mechanism, that Indonesia was, accused as violating the WTO regulations regarding prohibiting the export, especially the critical minerals, because that will be also affected the countries that need that kind of minerals. So now at this moment, we are still struggling and we are still facing the EU sort of like challenge at the WTO. The WTO has already decided that Indonesia is violating the principles or the regulations under WTO, but Indonesia was preparing for appealing the decisions. But as you know, currently the WTO is still in that kind of situation that we have to wait until the appealing process, the appellate body was in function again. So in a way that gives us a kind of a benefit that it is not the final decision yet. But again, that shows how difficult a developing country like Indonesia can pursue a downstreaming policies, because now it is not as easy as we thought. There will be global challenge because of that kind of situation will also affect other countries, especially those countries that need that the materials. But in domestically, there is also some sort of like criticism, because when we are focusing on downstreaming policy and enhancing our downstreaming industry, that there is another kind of how do you call it, like the over kind of extraction of the minerals in order to meet the need, in order to meet the requirement for the electric vehicles, in order to produce all the batteries and things like that. It requires even more sort of like the extraction from these kind of minerals. So that's why issues like the environmental issue has been going on, and then the NGOs, the academics criticizing the government in terms of the implementation. Personally, I do agree, because we need to do something regarding our global value chains positions, our global supply positions, no longer only exporting the raw materials, but at the same time, domestically, we also have to enhance our environmental standard in order to make it, and then in order to get the domestic support. So that's why I think it's very important for us to learn from each other. I don't know, Indonesia probably can also learn from Brazilian government how to deal with this kind of issues, because it is still new for us, and how then we can share the experience. The countries that have very rich with natural resources, but we cannot control over it. So those kind of issues. But again, I think regarding the how then Indonesia can also utilize BRICS membership in regard to downstreaming industries, we can also increase the foreign direct investment, especially from other BRICS countries, to invest in downstreaming industry in Indonesia or within the BRICS countries, in order to support the idea that domestic processing should be enhanced. So that's why I think foreign direct investment should be focusing on the downstreaming industry rather than just only exporting the raw materials. And by having the foreign direct investments on the downstreaming industry, then we can also learn about the technological transfer, right? Because not only exporting, but then now we have, the midstream, downstream, those are requiring also certain technological kind of advancement. So that's why by inviting other BRICS members to invest in this downstreaming industry, that can also assist each other in that kind of endeavor. And the second aspect regarding your questions on the how then Indonesian position regarding, the tackling the climate change issues, how then Indonesia and other developing countries are able to achieve our global commitment regarding net zero emissions, I think it's also very important collectively to also voice the interests of developing countries by, again, promoting the principles regarding common but differentiated responsibility. You know what I mean? CBDR kind of principles under the Paris Agreement. Without, well, not without, I mean, by recognizing that each country has, their own contribution, their own responsibility, that is very important because developing countries still have the rights to also pursue their economic growth. Country like Indonesia, like Brazil, we still need the government sort of like roles in order to ensure that our people still get something for their, in terms of the food security, in terms of their energy security. So while we are achieving those kind of goals, then now we are also facing our responsibilities and also, requiring by the global commitments to also reducing all the, all the aspects that we have to be careful about the, the environmental issues and things like that. But again, I think collectively, we can also voice the developing countries or the global South kind of interest that we have the rights to also pursue our global, economic growth. But at the same time, we also need some time in order for us to achieve our global commitment, especially regarding the net zero emissions. And learning from Indonesian experience, moving towards this kind of transition is not easy. There are some aspects regarding job loss. There are aspects that damage and loss kind of situations due to this climate change kind of issues. And then we cannot afford it by our own. So we need support. So that's why I think, again, collectively, using these BRICS as the instrument for the members to achieve together, I think it will give us kind of more chance to achieve this kind of global commitment as well. As you may also know that under the Indonesian leadership for the G20, there was an agreement regarding just transition partnership. But as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but then it seems that that kind of idea, even though it's really good on the paper, but it seems that it is not really well implemented yet. So the Just Transition Partnership Agreement was a pledge from several developed countries to support developing countries like Indonesia in order for them to achieve the net zero emission. And there were, I don't really remember how much it was, but it was a huge amount of money. But then until now, it seems like the implementation is still under, negotiation or even not being implemented yet. So that's why it is very important to support each other, not only in regard to the principles like, CBDR kind of principle, which is very important for developing countries. And if we can have one voice regarding that kind of principle, that will be very good. And again, in terms of the financing, in terms of how then to get the alternative kind of financing for developing countries when they have to commit to the global commitment, that is also important. While at the same time, we also understand that, the global commitment pledged by the developed countries are still not being implemented yet. So collectively, I think via BRICS, we can do much more. Thank you.
Professora Winanti, chegamos no nosso teto e eu queria agradecer muito pela sua presença, pela sua participação, pelos seus comentários. Espero que este seja o primeiro de muitos outros, sobretudo este ano que é tão importante para o Brasil, e que nós vamos ter a cúpula agora em julho, e com certeza vamos ter outras oportunidades. Acho que foi muito importante, como eu falei antes, nos aproximar mais da Indonésia e mais como parceiros e membros dessa família BRICS. Queria agradecer a todos que participaram conosco. Como da habitude, esse vídeo vai ficar na nossa página do BRICS Policy Center para alguma pesquisa, ou para os que não puderam participar poder acessar mais tarde. Muito obrigado de novo, e um bom dia para todos, e muito obrigado. Depois, seguramente, nós vamos continuar com esses nossos diálogos BRICS Plus do BRICS Policy Center. Tchau.